Hi, everybody. Welcome to our very first meeting of the Mix and Match Club for this year, which is working through this book by Esme Crick called Mix and Match Modern Crochet Blankets. I just love this book. I loved it when it came in because she uses, she's just so inspiring with her colors. But the more I read through this and delved into this, it is such a great book. So we're going to spend a little time talking about the book for a variety of reasons. We're going to talk about some yarn choices, some hook choices, some blanket size choices, and then I'm going to show you a couple of stitches. So it's going to be mostly an overview with a little bit of demonstration, but I'll let you know how the year is going to work out. Hi, Kim. There she is. And if you've got questions, because people this morning in class had questions, so I added some information. Don't hesitate to ask a question at any time. I'm all for it. Okay, so mix and match. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. Let's see. It's not finding my camera. Hold on. What are you crawling at? Stop this. Let me open the camera this way first. I'm going to pause the recording for just a second. Yay! Just in time to cough. Excuse me. Okay. Let me zoom out. I hope this is gonna. There we go. Oh, let me flip my camera. I was all set to go, and then I got screwed up. Okay. The mix and match book. All right. I just want to show some things in this book that I think are fabulous, even if you don't end up making the blanket. It is a great all over book. I'm not going to focus too much on the patterns because in case people are here who watch this later who don't have the book, it's proprietary. I just want to make sure she's getting her due because she did a fabulous job on this book. So I want to start with all of the materials, all of the blankets and samples that she has made in here are all using Color Crafter yarn from Sheep Gist, which we carry. It is a DK weight, non-pilling or anti-pilling acrylic yarn. Washable, dryable. And she used a USH hook. Excuse me. I have chosen, instead of using the Color Crafter, I picked a palette, which I'll show you in a minute, using our Sheep Gist Scrumptious, which is just a different palette of colors. It's also a DK weight. It is an anti-pilling, but it's all made with recycled plastic bottles. It's very soft. I really like it. I did do some samples with the H hook, the 5mm hook that she recommended. And I felt like it was a little loose for me, given my tension. So I moved down to a G, a 4mm hook, and I was very happy with it. But what's great about this book is that this project is done in strips. Each strip, you could use a slightly different hook. So for the sample that, for the first strip that I started with, I did an extended double crochet, and this is on the G hook. And I didn't like it on the H. It was a little too loose. But when we get to some of the other stitches, maybe in the mosaic or in the tapestry, I might want to move up to an H hook. And it doesn't matter because each strip is separate. So your gauge on each one can be a little bit different as long as the length of each strip ends up matching up at the end to join them as a blanket. So just know that find the hook that's comfortable for you in the fabric you like, given your yarn, but maybe have an extra hook a size below and a size above around, just in case when we get to a new stitch, like, ooh, this stitch is really tight. I wonder if I did it on a bigger hook if I liked it better, okay? So just know that that's something that I will probably do as we work through this. But as we start, I'm going to be using the Chic Just Scrumptious, a DK, and I'm going to use a G hook. But I've got one above and one below if I should need it in my little bag of tools. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about making a crochet strip. So, and I'm just working through the beginning of this book, things that I found where it's very easy to read and it's a nice book to read, but some things I want you to be aware of. Making a crochet strip, this little section on page 8. Each strip is worked back and forth, meaning we're going to be doing them. So like for this blanket, the strip will start here and it will work back and forth this way. So you are making the width of your blanket, and how many strips you put together will make the height of your blanket. Unless you're making square, and then it doesn't matter. So we'll talk about size in just a minute. But every strip, regardless of what it is, get back here, will start with a chain row and then a row of single crochet. And then the strip will end with a row of single crochet. It doesn't matter what the stitch is in between, it will start with single and end with single. And what that does is it allows it to be have a border added really easy at the end, okay? It's already set up for you. Excuse me. I'm going to show you, she recommends doing, chaining however many, and we'll talk about the strips in a minute, and then doing a row of single into the chain. I'm also going to show you how to do a foundation single crochet if you choose to do that, because that's something new that you might not know how to do. All right, so that little bit of information is there on page 8. Given her yarn and the hook that she used, she did 11 strips for every blanket, and she ended up with blankets that were approximately 40 inches wide by 50 inches long. And I wrote that wrong in the book. The strips will be 40 inches long, which will end up being the width. And then when you stack them all up, it ends up being 50 inches wide, which is roughly a nice big size throw. Excuse me. It's so dry in here. I apologize. If you want a larger blanket, if you want it to be wider, you can make your strips longer than 40 inches. If you want it to be shorter, you can go less, obviously. If you want it to be a taller blanket, you can make your strips wider, and we'll talk about how to do that when we get to them, or you could add additional strips. So know that that's an option. You don't have to stick with the 11 strips. I am not going to make a 40 by 50 blanket. I decided this year with Project Monday, I was going to have some realistic goals. So instead of trying to do a huge blanket like that and trying to keep up with it, because I want to have stuff done ahead of time so I can show you tips and tricks, I'm going to make more of a like stroller or crib size blanket. So I'm going to be making narrower strips, not quite as long. Okay. Yarn choices. You can use any yarn you want. We've got some people today who are using, they have a bunch of stash yarn that's all DK weight. Totally fine. The only thing if you're using stash and you're going to be mixing things up, make sure that all of those yarns will wash well together, meaning that their care instructions are the same. You don't want something that's going to end up felting on you when everything else is going to be fine. So be mindful of that. We've got some people using some wool, washable wool. We've got some people using the Color Crafter. We've got some people using the Sheep Just Soft Fun. We've got one lady who's doing it out of Katona because she wanted to do a cotton smaller blanket. So there are lots and lots of options. If you've got specific questions about yarn choices, holler out at any time, or you can reach out to us at the store and we'll get you hooked up. She does talk in here about how to choose, or how she chose colors. And we just talked on Instagram. We had one of the women in the class this morning had just been in Israel, and she had a picture of a sunrise. And so we went and we picked all of the colors. She's going to send it to her son who's in Israel. And all of the colors are from the photo that she had brought to us. And it's going to be beautiful. So you can create a mood or a vibe, or you can just randomly pick. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. I want to show you, one of my colors is in here because I sold it it was the last one. I sold it to somebody. So I was really inspired by this blanket because I love yellow and gray. So that was the start of my inspiration. So I just started pulling yellow and gray colors. So I ended up with, this is my palette plus like an off-white, but I ended up having to sell it to somebody today. So think of an off-white in here as well. I'm starting with one of each color because I don't know which color I really want to end up being dominant. I may add in other colors as we go. I may add a pop of color, particularly when we get to some of the 2-color crochet techniques. Maybe I'll add a little pop in. Maybe I'll add another color for the border. I'm just not sure yet. So I've just started with a small palette that I'm sure will probably grow a little bit. So don't feel like you have to invest in all of the yarn at one time. You don't have to, okay? All right, let me go back to sharing here about the reasons I wrote this book. All right, so then she's got, so just as a basic reference book for crochet, she's got all of your basic abbreviations for all of the crochet stitches. She's got, this book is written in US terms, but she's got the conversion. If you ever have a pattern that's written in UK terms, here's a little reference for it. And she talks about how the repeat formats work, which we'll talk about when we get to the individual strips. So that's in there. And then, lucky us, she also includes charts. So here is a key of chart symbols. I love crochet charts. It has really helped me become a better crocheter for a lot of reasons. It makes sense to me, and I'm going to show a chart today in just a little bit. But the chart symbols look like the stitches that they represent, which isn't necessarily the case in knitting charts. So if you're a experienced knitter and if you've used knitting charts, the symbols don't necessarily look like the stitches. They do in crochet. The cluster stitches look like clusters. The bobble looks like a bobble. The treble crochet has each of the little lines across it represents a yarn over. So in a treble, there are 3 yarn overs. In a double, there are 2. In a half double, there's 1. In a single, there are none. So it all makes sense to me, which I really like. Crochet charts also show, let me just flip to one real quick. They also show how, let me zoom in real quick, how stitches connect to each other. So if you're not sure where to put your next stitch, a crochet chart, even though you're going by the written directions, you can use the crochet chart as a reference. Oh, that treble crochet is coming right out of a single crochet. I'm not supposed to skip any. So you can use that as a reference, okay? Back to the beginning here. All right. So that's the chart symbols. And then she gives you some samples if you aren't sure what strips you want to use in this book, because there are 100 different patterns in here. Then she gives you some samples and tells you exactly what color she used in Color Crafter and what strip she used. So if something inspires you or a look inspires you, you could just copy one of these or choose your own colors or do a mix and match. But you can get inspired by the different, and they're all very different, the different samples that she's got in here. I will tell you though, this book is broken up into types of crochet stitches. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types of stitches or strips that we'll be making. First one are classic stitches, which is your basic single, half double, double, and treble. And then today I'm going to demonstrate how to do a back loop only stitch and an extended stitch. So those are the classic stitches. There's also textured stitches. There's mosaic stitches. There's fillet stitches. There's embellishment stitches. There's ribbing and cable stitches. There's tapestry stitches, and then bobbles and popcorn stitches. So each month we're going to cover one of those sections. Some of them, because there are a lot more stitches, will take 2 months to cover. So next month we're going to do textured stitches, and we'll do the same in March. So I'm going to demonstrate 3 different textured stitches in February and 3 different textured stitches in March. There's not time to demonstrate all of them, but I did go through and spend time. So whatever I'm demonstrating is a skill that you could use on a different strip in that same section. So a lot of them have a lot of similarities. And I've listed all of these. I think I'm almost done listing everything on the Project Monday page. If there is a particular strip you really want to learn and I don't list it, you will email me. I will happily add it to the list to do. I figured that was the easiest way. If people are invested and they really want to learn something, I'll demonstrate it, no problem. Otherwise, I just picked ones that I felt were kind of universal and would help you get to any of the strips that are listed. Okay. So she's got all of these samples set up, but the samples don't include all of the stitch categories. For example, this one, which was kind of my inspiration, none of the strips listed here are filet crochet, embellishment, or tapestry. So I couldn't, for purposes of this class we're doing, I can't just copy this because I want to demonstrate all of the sections. So there might be more than one classic stitch in here. So maybe I would replace a classic stitch with a tapestry stitch. You could do it that way. But this gives you an idea of how you can do it. Really, there's no wrong answer to this. I've got somebody today who's really not interested in making a blanket. She really wants to learn new stitches. So she may end up doing hers more as a block and stitch them together to do a pillow. She's not really sure where it's going to go yet. So you can do whatever you want to do with it. But if you want to follow along, you absolutely could have a finished blanket by the end of the year. All right. Let me look at my list here because I had a lot of notes. All right, we're going to work through, when we work through the strips, I'm going to demonstrate and show the written directions. I'm also going to show how to use the chart. With the basic stitches, it's really not that complicated, but as we get into more complicated stitches, like cables, the chart gets interesting and can be exceptionally helpful. So we'll work through the written directions and we'll work through with the chart so you can see how they both can help you in making your stitches and making it look correct. Somebody asked this morning what the difference between tapestry crochet and mosaic crochet. This is an example of tapestry crochet. It's a 2-color crochet. And here is an example of, excuse me, mosaic crochet, also a 2-color. The difference is mosaic, you are on a row, you're only using 1 color, but you are going behind a previous row or dipping down into a lower row, so that a previous color stands up. In tapestry, you are using 2 colors at the same time. I might have to get a mint in a minute. You're using 2 colors at the same time, and you are crocheting over the color you don't want to show. So they're both 2-color. They both have their positives and negatives, and we'll work through both of them. In this book also are some smaller projects using some of her techniques. So you could do a crochet bag using one of them. I think there's 3 or 4 of them in here, different projects. And then at the back, I'm always looking for anything that has really good illustrations is really good in my book, of the basic stitches, because new people, they need a good reference. Not every YouTube video is made the same, so having a good reference, and these are great references, and it's just what you need to know, not too much extra information. So all in all, I think this is a great reference book. You don't have to make a blanket. You can apply it to a lot of different things. All right. Did I talk too long during that part? No, not at all. Perfect. Okay, so any questions before we move on to the next part? Oh, you guys are good. Okay. We got paper here. Let me zoom out. Okay, like I said, every strip I'm going to demonstrate on a bigger yarn so that it's a little easier to see for you guys, and then I'll show you how I did it in my current strip. Every strip starts with a row of chains, and then a row of single crochet. You will notice how many chains is determined. So the first one I'm going to demonstrate, square one is single crochet. I'm not demonstrating that. I'm not going to demonstrate single crochet back loop only. I'm going to demonstrate the double crochet back loop only, which would apply the same thing. I'm not going to show you the extended single crochet. I'm going to show you the extended double crochet. You already know how to do a half double crochet. You already know how to do a double crochet. So I'm going to show you the double crochet back loop only, and I'm going to show you the extended double crochet. So strips 6 and 7 are what I'm going to demonstrate today. You can choose to make a whole strip out of any of these, or you could use them as fillers later if you need to add a pop of color between strips. And I say that later because all of these strips can be done in any number of chains that you want to do. Some of the patterns, I'm just going to flip to this one right here. She will always tell you how many chains or how many multiples of chains to use. So you can choose how wide your strip is based on how many multiples you want to use. If you want to make it a skinny strip, like, oh, I kind of like that, but I don't want a big wide one. Maybe I'll just do 2 multiples of 5 plus 4 stitches for my starting chain. Or, oh, I really like that. Or maybe I want to do it twice. You can make it wider or however you want. It's really, really interchangeable for you. When it comes to this, when we come to the ones where it's multiples of something, I will be doing the chart always shows a certain number of stitches. I will probably be only doing 1 or 2 repeats because, like I said, overall, I want to make a smaller blanket. and I want to be able to stay ahead and finish. So if I was doing a blanket for myself for the house, then I probably would want to do a whole repeat, or or a whole chart, or increase the chart. It just depends on what you want to do. All right. So double crochet back loop only. Like I said in the beginning, every strip is going to start with a chain and then a row of single. She recommends in her description, I'm going to show you a couple of ways here. She recommends doing a chain. So I'm just going to chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'll have 6 stitches. She recommends doing your row of single crochet, not into the front of the chains, but into the bump on the back of the chain. And I'll show you what that looks like. So I would go into because I'm doing a row of single, I'm going to skip the first chain, go into the second chain away from the hook, and I'm going to go into the bump on the back side and make my single crochet across. And what that does is it gives you kind of an interesting edge. This yarn that I'm using, I grabbed some chunky yarn I thought would show up on camera, is the Ikigai alpaca, and it feels so good. It's so smooth. Into every bump, so I'm working into the back side of the chain. And then I'll flip it over and show you what that looks like. So it gives you a kind of a nice flat, even, and a little bit stretchy chain and single, as opposed to going into the top of the stitch. You also get a very nice edge this way, so that when you go to pick up your border, you've got a really nice edge to crochet into. So that's one way you could do it, right? Another way to do it is to do a foundation single crochet. And foundation single crochet is one of those things that I always have to look up because I just don't do it often enough to remember. I've got my little notes. I have also included a link on the page for this particular class to Tony Lipsy's video for the foundation crochet stitches. You can do it for a single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, treble crochet. You can do all of that. We're doing a single. So here's how it works. Start with a slip knot. The nice thing about a foundation single crochet is that it makes your chain row and your first row of single all at the same time. It is a relatively stretchy kind of cast on. If you're somebody who chains a little bit on the tighter side, if you've got crocheted things that end up being a little more narrow at the bottom because your chain row is so tight, you might want to think about this. And it's a little bit of a time saver. If you're chaining for a blanket and you have to chain 200 stitches, then you have to count those chains. A foundation single crochet can really save you. All right, so here's how you start with a slip knot. We're going to chain 2. We're going to insert the hook into the first chain. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and split the yarn. All right, so that's the first part. And then we're going to chain 1. The chain 1 we just made is like making the chain of the chain row. Now we're going to make the single crochet on top of the chain. Yarn over, pull through both. So I've done one foundation. We're kind of, and let me get a couple and then I will turn it so it looks like something you would recognize. So right where my thumb is, I'm actually going to take it back out to when I made yarned over and I pulled up a loop. When you make the chain one, right here, I put my thumb right here because that's where I'm going to end up putting the next single crochet, foundation crochet. Yarn over, pull through both loops. Now I want to go, I'm going to turn it just a little bit. I'm going to go underneath both legs of that chain right where my thumb are. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Chain one, move my thumb, yarn over, pull through both loops. Turn it, go underneath both legs of that chain right where my thumb was. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both. I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it. So on this side, we've been making the chain row. On this side, we've been making the single crochet. So when it's done, and I'll do a couple more here, here's your chain row, and here's your single on top of it. And you have those nice chain stitches that you can pick up into. I'm going to do a couple more and then we'll compare the two. So one of the things that's nice about this is if you did not chain the right number of stitches, you don't have to pull it all out. You can just keep making more foundation single crochets or doubles or half doubles, whatever you want to do. Chain one. But by putting your thumb there, it's really easy to find that chain stitch. Chain one and over, pull through both. Tension isn't very good on that. Let's do this over. Underneath 3 legs of that chain. And over, pull up the loop. Chain one and over, pull through both. Both legs. One. So it also makes a very stretchy, even cast on. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple more here, and then I'm going to demonstrate the back loop only. So you can choose how you want to do it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So here's the where I did the single and I did the chain and then the single into the back loop. Here's where I did the foundation. They both have the nice edge there to pick up for a border. Those are the bottoms. And they both have your 2 legs of that looks like a V to make your stitches into. So I think these are both good options for you to do. Okay. The back loop only, which you guys all may be familiar with, is it adds a little bit of texture to your stitches. So you can chain any number of, for my sample, I believe I did 14. And you can see it's a little bit, it has a little bit of a wave to it because the back loop only does is it pulls the stitch forward and then you flip it over. I'm sorry, it pulls the stitch to the back, and then when you flip it over and you do the back, it pulls that stitch to the back, so it reverses. So you get this nice kind of back and forth. It's a little bit more textured than just a plain double crochet. Okay. let me just show you how that works. You're going to chain 2. The other thing that this book does, these patterns will do for you, is they will tell you whether or not your chains at the beginning of a row count as a stitch. They do not. They do not count as a stitch. If you're new, if you're unfamiliar with or newer to crochet, this is very important to know whether you're going to be using that chain 2 at the beginning, whether it's going to count as one of your double crochets or whether it's not. In this case, it does not. And what that tells me is, as I'm doing a row and I turn around and I come back, the last stitch I make in a row is not going to go into the top of a chain 2 because it doesn't count as a stitch. All right, so I chain 2, turn it over. I'm going to do a double crochet into the very first stitch. And I'm only going to go into the back loop. So if I look at the 2 legs of the V, or the 2 loops, instead of going underneath both, only going to go underneath the back loop. And then you finish your double crochet as usual. Let's put that in. And then go into the next one, back loop only. Some patterns, you'll see back loop and front loop. It works the same way. Sometimes you alternate back loop and front loop. And you get something that looks like ribbing, which you could absolutely do for this blanket. You could switch it up. Although we are going to do some ribbing kind of work later on. All right. Back loop only. Back loop only. One, two, three, four, five, 6. So if you are new, I recommend as soon as you make the first stitch of a row, so that you can recognize when you are supposed to stop. That way you don't have to constantly count, is to put a stitch marker in the top of your first stitch. I'm going to do the same thing on this next row. Chain 2. Turn it over. I'm going to go into the very first stitch, yarn over, back loop only. This. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over. Get them off thumbs. And you all want to stop right there. So I've made 1 stitch. Here's the chain 2. The chain 2 that doesn't count as a stitch is just going to lie next to the first double crochet. So as soon as I make that stitch, mark it with some sort of stitch marker, so you know as you work across, I'm going to work across all these stitches, this is where my last stitch is going to go. I know I don't have to go into that chain 2, which when I'm only doing 6 stitches, it doesn't really matter. It's pretty easy to see. But if you're new, it's hard to recognize those stitches. Or if these stitches are new to you, like some of them might be later on, it could be helpful. If the pattern had told us that the chain 2 did count as a double crochet, then I would have put my stitch marker in the top chain of that chain 2, so that I know that's where I'm going to put my last stitch. So here's my stitch marker, my last stitch. In the back loop only. Take it out. So you get this little bit of a ridge, because, and tilt it this way, because it's pulled the stitch. It's pulled the stitch to the back like this. Chain 2. Turn it over. make my first stitch. Mark it with a stitch marker. And if you've got just the little split rings, those are nice because they hang on. You only need them to stay for a little bit. They're easy to slip on and off. So I've been crocheting a long time, but I do find myself, sometimes I work on a project and I put it down and don't come back to it for a while. Having those stitch markers is a really good reminder of where my rows begin and end, and helps me get back into the pattern. So we teach all of our beginners that, and I highly recommend it. Okay, let me do the last one here. And then you can see how a couple of rows of this backward roaming ends up looking. So as opposed to just flat double crochet, it's got a little pop, a little texture to it. I'm going to turn it sideways. Okay, something kind of fun, something kind of different. So you can see how it's got a little stretch to it. You can see how this might be ribbing for a hat going this way, or ribbing on the edge of a blanket or something, okay, or the bottom of a sweater. So that's back loop only. Are there any questions?
No, but I did the single back loop only if you want to see it.
Oh, yeah. Let me highlight you. Spotlight for everyone. Okay, show it to me, Kim. Ooh, pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that. It almost looks a little bit corrugated.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Like
it probably worked up pretty fast too.
Mm-hmm, very fast.
Yeah. So I like the double. The single, for some reason, the single's kind of a slog for me, but it's totally up to you. You can pick any of these classic stitches to make a strip out of. The technique is the same for a single or a double. You could even do it as a half double. You can do it any way you want. All right. Any other questions? Okay, so let me show you how to do an extended double crochet. Again, this will apply to an extended single crochet or an extended half double crochet as well. What it does is it makes the stitch just a little bit taller and a little bit wider. I'm just going to do it on top of this existing that we've got right here. Again, this is strip number 7 that I'm doing, the extended double crochet. This also can be done in any number of chains. And it also starts with a chain 2, which does not count as a double crochet in this pattern. All right, so this time we're going to go underneath both legs. So I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to go into the stitch as you would normally do a double. Pull up a loop. I've got 3 loops on my hook. Here's where the extended comes. I'm going to yarn over. I'm just going to pull through 1 loop. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So it gives it 1 extra yarn over. But it's the pulling through the 2 stitches that you're not pulling through. You don't have 3 extra yarn overs, so it's not that much taller, but the extra yarn over also adds a little bit of bulk to it. So it makes it not quite so holy. And I think you will see that as you work across. You'll be able to compare from the row below. So yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. You could do this with a single, and I'll show that too because it doesn't take long. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. I don't recommend doing this when you're tired, because all of a sudden you'll realize that you've done 4 rows of just regular double crochet. You get in the mode and then you lose it. Yarn over, pull through one, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two. And I have one more stitch. Because I marked it. I don't have to count, which is so nice. Yarn over, pull through one, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two. All right. So here's a row, even though these were back loop only, of regular double crochet. And here we have extended double crochet. So they are, I want to say, a little fatter and just a little bit taller. They're not as tall as a treble or a triple crochet, and there's not quite as much space in between them. So it's a nice stitch. If you were doing as a single, I'm just going to chain one this time. Now I have to remember how to do this. Hold on. I don't want to show you wrong. Second thing. Oh, you're just doing it twice. Okay. Go into the stitch, pull up a loop for a single. So I did not start with a yarn over, obviously. Yarn over, pull through one, yarn over. Is that right? The first yarn over, and then draw through both. Yes, sorry. And then through both. So I'm going to do a couple of extended singles, and then I'll do a couple of regular singles so you can see the difference. So you're just doing each loop. Don't do one. So that extra yarn over just makes it just a little bit taller and just a little bit fatter.
Which one are you doing, Pam?
So I just did a row of extended single on top of
Okay.
the extended double.
Okay.
All right.
I thought you said extended double. I'm sorry.
I did the extended double first, but then I did extended single on top of that.
Yeah.
And then if I were to do just regular single, then you can compare. Single. I always feel, with the chunky yarn, the single goes so fast. I always feel like the single just takes so long. It's one of the shortest stitches. I like the half double crochet. That's my favorite stitch. Okay, so here's a row of extended single, and here's a row of regular single. A little bit taller and a little bit fatter. So you don't have to go all the way to the next stitch. It's a way to add a little bit more in between. So here's what I started a strip with my yarn, and I'm doing the extended double crochet. And I think, so I figured it is, because I don't really know what size my blanket's going to end up being at this point. It's about 3.5 inches wide, which is great. I think I want to do, for the total width of my blanket, I'm thinking probably like 30 inches for like maybe between 28 and 30 inches, depending on what kind of border, for a stroller or a baby blanket. So if that's the case, I probably don't want my whole thing to be wider than maybe 40-ish inches at the most. So I'm going to be keeping my strips on the narrow side, which also means I'll be finishing, because I can do. So here I've been doing, this is the extended double. And this is how I figured out that I didn't really like the H hook. It just looked a little too loose for me. But I do think I'm going to want that slightly bigger hook on some of these other stitches, particularly where maybe we're going over another yarn. Or where we're making a lot of increases into a stitch. But you can see that the chain 2 at the beginning of the row just ends up laying right next to, there's the chain 2 at the beginning of a row, and it just lays right next to the double crochet that I made. Just kind of becomes part of it. And it will be an edge that I will be able to, when we seam our strips together, that we can go into right there. It's a nice stretchy. I really like this yarn. It's very soft. One of the colors I picked, I don't know if you'll be able to see, yeah, is Heather, which I like, which will add a little bit more kind of dimension and texture to it. So I'm excited. I think that's all I had for today. Are there any questions? It could be anything about this project. Kim, no comments? You always got something to say, girl.
I always got something to say. Did everybody understand the stitches as she was going over them? Everybody got which stitches were which? Okay.
Good.
Yep.
So next time, did you have a question, somebody? Okay. So next time, here's what I picked. And this is listed on the page, is the number 10, the Alpine stitch. We're going to be going over textured stitches. The Alpine stitch, let me go back to sharing so I can show you. Zoom out. There we go. The Alpine stitch, number 10. And then I love this stitch. The Catherine wheel, which I think is just a really fun, it looks intimidating, it is not. And then number 12, the sedge stitch, which I think is really, it has a lot going on, both vertically and horizontally. And this will be a great one to show how the chart can really help you as to where the stitches in each row attach to each other. So that's for next month. And then the following month, we're going to still be in texture. I'm going to show number 15, basket weave. And then 17, rigid ripples, which is really fun. And then another favorite of mine is number 21, the herringbone stitch, which is really pretty. If there is something else in the textured section, like the iris stitch or wavy days, or God forbid, somebody wants to do loopy loops, if you will email me at info@aroundthetableyarns.com, I will happily be ready to demonstrate it. Okay. Any of the
loops.
You want loopy, you troublemaker. I know it. I'm happy to, so if I've got the ones listed, I'm going to demonstrate because I know that they'll allow you to do not just that strip, but probably another couple of strips. But if there's one that's not listed that you really want to see, go ahead and email. I'm happy to do that. It's not a problem at all. I won't be having loopy loops in my blanket, but Kim's going to have loopy loops in her blanket. So I think I've got them all listed so far, like through October. I just haven't had the time to sit and type them in. I'm going to finish that tonight. So you'll have an idea of all of the ones that will be demonstrated. If there's others you want to see, let me know. I'm happy to demonstrate them. And then we'll spend some time at the end doing the edging and seaming together. Somebody asked today, can you seam together as you go? You absolutely could. Here's why I'm not. Stop sharing here. I'm not sure how all of these colors, plus the off-white that I've got, if they're all going to balance out with my strips. I might want to add, ooh, I really need a little bit more white in over here until they're all done. I kind of want to see the big picture before I put it together. I want to jigsaw it together. Another reason is, oh my God, I really should have added something up. Like I really need, it's so blah. I need to add something. That's when you can add a narrow strip of one of these classic stitches that doesn't take long, or one of the other new stitches in a narrow strip, or something you want to tie into the border that you can then add in between the blocks. The other thing is I may not want, if I've got a strip with bobbles in it, I may not want that next to the strip that I do the week before, the month before, because maybe it's got a similar look to it, and maybe I wanted those strips spread out to balance the texture in it. So that's why I'm not going to join as we go. You absolutely can, but I would say, I would warn you, that's probably not the best bet. It's not going to take long to seam it together. I swear. We're going to do it, and it's going to be great. If you are probably like Kim, one of these dead set people who's got a plan, she already knows, she's diagrammed it out and colored in her little, she knows what it's going to be. She could stitch together as she goes if she wants to, because she knows what she's going to do already. If you're not so sure, don't do it. Maybe as we get closer to the end, you could start seaming, but I wouldn't start doing it right away. I would wait a little bit and make sure that it's going to lay out the way you want it to lay out, because you're putting in some time here. Let's make sure it looks good. What else did somebody ask this morning?
I also set up a Ravelry group on Around the Table Yarns, in case you want to go just show the yarns you're using, or if you even have questions about the yarn versus needle sizes.
Yes.
You can use. I set up a
nice. So our Ravelry group is called Friends Around the Table. You can join the group, and then Kim will have started a forum. And what did you call it? Mix and match?
Mix and match blanket.
Perfect. So you can post pictures, you can post questions, you can, as you work on a strip, post it and get we can comment on each other's and get all the feel good things. That would be awesome. And maybe you'll get inspired by somebody else's. So I think that's great.
And if you need help, we always have the Ravelry, the Zoom group.
Zoom group, you can come into the shop if you're local. If not, I'll be on the Monday with either Kim or both of us will be here Mondays and Thursdays on our Zoom group, and we're happy to demonstrate or answer questions anytime. So
absolutely.
And if you can't do that, email or call, and we'll work it out some way. We can hop on Zoom together, and I can demonstrate something. I've done that plenty of times. So yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Me too.
Yeah. If you are ordering, if you're not local and you need to order yarn for your blanket, remember, because it's for a class, you do get a 10% discount, but you got to let us know. So you can either call ahead or just do a phone order, or go ahead and order it and we can refund you the difference. Just put it in the notes of the order that this is for the mix and match blanket, and we can refund you the difference. So know that we can do that for you. Any supplies you need for this. If you need new hooks, whatever, that would be great. Right, I'm gonna stop the recording.